So here's the deal.
Yesterday, Tim and I had a fight.
I had some beef with another board game content creator, and her name is Carly from Board Game Buzz.
He was arguing with me, trying to send me a game. I was trying to pay for shipping, and he refused to let me.
I'm just trying to send you the game. Stop trying to pay for it, Carly. She was being way too nice for it, and I'm like, no. I need to get this to you, and there's only one condition to get that over. And then after that, Carly surprised me with a video that, I kid you not, my face is still sore this week because I could not stop laughing with our entire debacle in this past week. But she surprised me with this video.
The best part about this video is Tim has no idea this video is coming, so.
Talking about 5 games that she would steal from my collection. And I loved that video. It was so good. Not only, obviously her choices were spot on and games that they would hurt my soul if I were to lose any one of them. But the thing is, Carly and I have extremely similar gaming tastes. No, I'm dead serious. Like, spot on, like a 90-95% ratio of the exact same games, because we even release videos at the same time, completely by coincidence. I swear it is not planned, and it's about like the same thing. Because I just put like a video about touring the collection, and she did the exact same thing, like literally within the same time frame, and it is insane, okay? So there was a second package that was sent to her that was supposed to arrive before Bantam. And she actually ended up recording this amazing, epic, spontaneous video that you need to see also, that I will link to. And just like her opening it, her excitement about it, her happiness for it, and all her kids super excited for it. Just like, it made my freaking day, week, year, you name it.
I did one board. It's wrapped up.
Okay, wait, what?
The fact that Addie was like, wait, mom, this is the one you wanted. But yeah, before we dive into my favorite games of the month for May, I just want to tell you all about Carly from Board Game Buzz. She does a lot of amazing things there, okay? Like, if you like the videos I do here, trust me, you will love her videos way more. They're so good, they're so fun. I'm watching them all the time. She does reviews with a ton of really good insight. It really gives you a good perspective on how you would feel playing a game. And I love also when she shares like her first impressions as she's diving into a brand new one, like with Root and stuff. It's one of my favorite videos that she did. So she does a lot of really fun stuff on the channel. Definitely subscribe to her if you aren't already. Check her out in the link below. And yeah, Carly, thank you so much for all those fun videos that you made over the past week. And till the time we can game in person, I cannot wait for the chaos that will ensue then. And hopefully we will have a camera to record it all in its full glory when we finally get to game in person. So I hope you enjoy Bantam West, and objectively, the greatest game of all time. All right, Wolfpack, it's time to talk about the favorite games played in May. Starting off first, not strong, actually. I'm just gonna go ahead and premise that right away. And that is with Lizard Wizard. So in Lizard Wizard, you have 7 different schools of magic. And I'm gonna stop right there because they are not that different. Like, they're only different in the resources that you can obtain. And that's why I immediately just called it after like one play, because I'm like, I was so disappointed. And one big thing here is that you all know that I am a sucker for games with deluxe resources, okay? That's tried and true. But it's a double-edged sword, because when games are heavily produced and they are backed with really good gameplay, then I super love that game, right? If you take that to the other end, opposite side of the spectrum, and you have a wonderfully produced game like Lizard Wizard, but instead it lacks gameplay, then it just shoots all the way down for me, because then not only do I have this excitement and anticipation, but I'm also let down. And that's exactly how I felt with Lizard Wizard, because the production is beautiful. The cars are like as big as my head. They're huge, and they don't need to be that big. And that's what also led me to calling it, because I'm like, I was looking forward to this game and I'm playing it, and it is just so repetitive because they are not very unique at all, the different schools of magic, because it is a deck building game. And ultimately you're trying to collect these wizards in order for you to build a tableau and generate different resources. But it's just so repetitive, because it really is like, if you take one lizard, you get one resource. If you take another wizard, you get another resource. And I'm just like, you're repeating that 7 times. That's it. And then even the dungeon where you're supposed to go and adventure and everything is just completely random. And there's like no strategy to it. So overall, it wasn't a compelling game for me. And that's why it was a pretty rough start to the month from there. So actually the first couple of games where I'm just like, what is happening here? So number 2 is Scout. Now Scout, nothing wrong with that game. Okay, it's a good game. It's a good card game. But long story short, I just feel like it's very overhyped. Like, I get the how different it is, but at the same time, I'm just like, I don't understand why it was getting so much like Raven stuff. But I only played it once, so that's a pure, first impressions judgment, and it's not going anywhere in my collection. It's definitely staying because it was definitely something that I really wanted to get while I was in Japan. So again, nothing wrong with Scout, but I'm just like wary of the hype behind it before. Now the third one I played like rescued my excitement for games this month, and that one was Raiders of the North Sea. This is a worker placement game where you are trying to build up a Viking army. And you have this engine that you're building with resources like gold and warriors that you are taking to travel overseas and raid different villagers, Raiders of the North Sea. So as you are pillaging the villages on the sea and across the sea, it just amplifies. So I love the progression in this system because as you gain more Vikings, you gain more different abilities. And then as you gain those different Vikings too, you also unlock stronger buildings that you can pillage. And I think the way it escalates up is really fun. It's also very easy to teach too, because in the game, you only start off with like a few different areas that you can gather resources from. What's cool about teaching this game and onboarding people onto this mechanic is that as you're teaching this first area, it translates on over to the next area. So you just need to learn a little bit, and then you start layering on different mechanics as they unlock as you progress through the game, which is super cool because this is how I typically teach games in general. Like I always try to teach through a layering system, especially for like the first gameplay. And so I feel like this game was made for me to teach too. So I loved Raiders of the North Sea. It is not going anywhere. And I cannot wait to dive into the other parts of the series in this one. Now, with that said, game number 4 of this month was Oceans. So Oceans, I think was, oh no, there's one more after this. Oceans was also another letdown for me, unfortunately. Again, super produced game, beautiful. I had all the deluxe resources and everything for this, and it, like Lizard Wizard, was just very repetitive. So in Oceans, what you're trying to do is you're building up an ecosystem of fish. Sounds cool, right? You're building an ecosystem of fish, and you can attack other players by building up different species that have different effects, unique effects too. You're pretty much building up your own species of fish, and you have to maintain how much food you have every turn. And there are also some deep sea cards that give you a lot of stronger effects too. And in the expansion that I backed to, there's a legendary edition where you have access to these crazy legend monsters. So overall, I gave it up because I was pretty sad with how the game was overall. Like I haven't daydreamed this much while playing game than when I played Oceans, and I felt like that was a good sign to let it go because I just wasn't interested in how repetitive each turn felt. I didn't feel like there was anything that I wanted to do my next turn. Like there wasn't anything I was anticipating. I wasn't really like hooked. Get what I did there. See what I did there because fish in. But it gets better though after this next one. So Frostpunk was the first solo game that I played this month. And so this is a good game, okay? There is a center tower, and in this game, you are trying to survive. To survive, you need to issue out different orders to everyone, and your workers are going out to like the fields, to the snow. They're putting coal into this middle tower to keep everyone warm, and they're trying to prevent sickness. But the more you use people, the more sick that they get. And I think that cycle is really fun. I also think the premise is really interesting because you make a lot of tough decisions. Like every day, the start of every day, like bad things happen. And it is a bleak game, but I thought it was cool and it was interesting and it was enough to hook me into it. And even taking your actions, like when you're taking actions in this game, it is a lot of actions, which is really fun. Like that's where the fun is in you trying to balance this survivability versus you taking actions type of play here. But the downer for me, unfortunately, was the amount of upkeep in this game. There is a ridiculous amount of upkeep. Now, I'm not even kidding, like 7 different phases of upkeep. So I spent more time in that game and I kind of gave it up halfway through because I was just regulating and maintaining the game cycle versus me actually playing the game. If there was less maintenance, I would easily keep this game in my collection. But unfortunately, I called that one too, despite how cool that tower was in the middle. So the next couple games that I played were all solo games, and they were all really, really big games. So the first one was Primal. Now, I will be doing designated reviews for Primal and the next two, as you'll see, coming up very soon. But for Primal, it was a lot. Like these were some very heavy games like Primal, ATO, and Hoplomachus Victorum. I'm going to talk about all of them right now. But they are so complex and there's a lot going on. I think between the three, from like a first impression, like playing just the first chapter of each game, I will say that Hoplomachus Victorum was my favorite of the three because there's just straight action. It feels like you're in a Street Fighter. You know, the very first Street Fighter where you pick a character and then you're traveling to different countries to like fight them. That's exactly how Hoplomachus feels. And I love the events of that game. And the way battle works is really fun because like, it's a chip theory game where like you have chips underneath and each unit has a special ability. But the coolest thing about Hoplomachus Victorum is that yes, you are trying to defeat this god in a span of like I forget how many phases that you have, but you have a certain amount of phases where you're trying to defeat a primal god or something. And to do that, you have to build up your army. And one very cool way to build up your army is to recruit people that you defeat. So I love that mechanic in Hoplomachus. The combat is seamless once you like get all the nuances down. But that was definitely my favorite from the three. And then there was Primal. I think Primal is really cool too. The only thing that I'm a little bit worried about is that Primal is only on one map because this is a boss battling game. And to have every single boss on one map is a little worrisome for me because there's no like differences in variation. And the terrain was okay because there are like these little plastic figures and stuff, or miniatures if you got the miniatures. There are these miniatures that like boost your stats and increase your attack value and heal you as you're fighting the boss, which I thought was pretty fun. But I think it's something that I definitely want to experiment with more. It's just that the card rotation I think is the most fun thing about Primal, because the way you are rotating your cards throughout to regulate your hero is really interesting, but I definitely need to spend a lot more time before I give you some comprehensive thoughts about that one. And then the last one of the big three that I covered in this month, or that I got to play, was ATO, which I'm staring at right now because it's so freaking large. But ATO, I think this one has me the most interested to find out what's next, because let me just preface this with a spoiler on ATO, just in case. But I think I saw that your champion gets to like take on and absorb the power of the primal that you're fighting, which would be awesome. I'm not really interested in like the campaign version of this. I'm more interested in like the boss battling mode, but it looks really fun overall. And the first, I got wrecked in the first intro scenario that we were learning as, but it's cool that you get to play as like 4 different heroes, just like in Oathsworn. So because ATO feels like Oathsworn to me, this is why I'm definitely gonna give it another couple shots before I give a full review on it. But I'm excited about all 3 overall. So Hoplomachus, ATO, Primal, 3 big solo games and 3 solo games that I can't wait to dive more into. And the next one is a hidden gem. Actually, there have been 2 hidden gems that I found lately. And trust me, these games are really good. So the next one I played was Valdo. This is the game where it was like a wooden box that you saw on my shelf. And I finally got that game played. And it is surprisingly pretty fun. Okay, so in this game, you have a little engine that you're building up. And it's a worker placement game-esque because you're visiting different gods. And you're trying to like capitalize the areas that the gods are in. You're almost like worshiping them for their power. And it's all like behind Norse myth, right? So you have Thor and Loki and Odin, and each one has their own individual power and stuff. And it's a very easy game. It's a very light game because you have just a couple of resources that you're maintaining, like gold and diamonds and stuff. And I think the most fun part is that when you're attacking people, you can defend against their attacks with shields. It's probably the best at like 3 players or more because you need that player interaction to like constantly attack each other. But I'm going to spend some more time with it because I think it's something that people do not want to miss. And I don't know why this one hasn't been talked about enough just yet. Speaking of that, the next one I played was Warline. So you will see a gameplay. You will see me raving about this game like maybe 2 more times on this channel. I'm going to be doing a full review about this one, which is again not sponsored, but I am also going to have a gameplay for this one that is sponsored. And y'all, Warline is not talked about enough. Like I'm trying to think about the title for this video that I want for this review because I want people to see it. That way people like are inclined to back it because it's such a good game. Okay, Warline is a 1 to 4 player game now because the expansion Dragon's War adds in a solo mode. But ultimately, I think this is a really great game at 2 because it's very chess-like. And how this game works is you initially build out a map for your opponent because your goal is to take out your opponent. There are 5 different ways to win. The 3 main ways are to eliminate your opponent's pieces, or to imprison them, or to the third one, I think, it's to build to destroy their outposts. Okay, but the first thing that you do is you build out a map for your opponent, not for yourself, for your opponent. And there are asymmetric factions here. And I think one of the best things about this game is that every faction utilizes the territory that you build or that your opponent builds to the T. Like, I have never seen a game that changes the territory, the terrain that you're in this much, because like the Flame faction will literally burn down forests and people will take damage for it. Or the Frost Kingdom, they'll like fly on to other people's ramparts, and then they descend down and they can march through mountains and ice. And there's just so much going on with the terrain, which is really cool. And I think that this game has like a pretty hefty rulebook, but ultimately the games are really fast. It's like 20 to 35 minute games, because after you build out your map, you also build out your units, because you can choose like a set of units between 1 through 6, 6 being the strongest, arguably, because they can like demo down walls, and they also can use like the strongest effects, but 1 isn't necessarily the weakest, because 1 also gives you the most actions too. And then after you build out a map and your outposts and your armies, you just go straight to war and you start fighting it out. So it feels like chess checkers with a lot of theme and layers and asymmetric factions added on. That's pretty much what Warline feels like. And I'm going to leave links to the campaign down below because you need to check it out. I want to see it funded, so you'll see more coverage from it on my channel very, very soon. I played Warline the most this month, actually. It's 6 times this month. And one of it was for the sponsored gameplay, but the rest of it was us playing it beforehand, and we couldn't stop playing before we had to film like to work. So it was a really fun game, and I love that one. Now, next one that we played, the 2 more games we played. This is also a spontaneous one, and that was Black Rose Wars Rebirth. I played this one with Josh, and we used the expansion that added in the Chaos spell cards. So those were totally new to me, and it's an interesting deck because in the Chaos spell deck, you get to put out these tokens in different rooms, and depending on if you land on that particular token, you get to incite Chaos effects. And Chaos lets you draw a card from your grimoire, which is like your deck of cards. And depending on what you draw, the type of card that you draw, a different effect happens. So it is very apt and very in tune with being actual Chaos cards. So that was a ton of fun, but Josh got wrecked in that game. I felt bad because it was his first time learning the game, so it wasn't fair. And I just demolished him with nightmares overall, like the Umbras. So that's like my favorite thing to do in that game, because if you're not familiar with Black Rose Wars, I will link it somewhere around here. But it's a mage dueling game where you are building out a different spell deck and you're just going at it in this arena, destroying each other, and it's crazy. And Josh got wrecked. I'm gonna say that again. Sorry, Josh. But I think my next goal for that game is to definitely streamline it more, because I want to figure out a better way to teach it, because like there are a lot of options that you need to be aware about before you even take your first turn. So it is a difficult teach, but I'm gonna figure out a way to make it better, because I want to bring it out more and introduce it to more people, but gotta figure out a way to streamline that one. And the last game that we finished with this month is the one and only Dwellings. So I have not yet been entertained by the idea that I just keep losing to Jackie in Dwellings. So I pitched a game night to her, and I was like, hey, I want a rematch with Dwellings. And guess what? I lost again. So I was playing as the dwarves this time. Got to use gold very, very differently. I don't play with the dwarves that often, but I really got to capitalize a lot on the gold resources in Dwellings, and that was a ton of fun. It was a pretty close game though, because that was my first time getting Calculation. And Calculation is a card that allows you to manipulate the die in any way you want. So I can make it a 6 every time I fight. And I was just fighting more often. I just end up doing, that's the other thing with Dwellings. I think I'm mostly losing because I'm mostly having fun doing other things. I'm not focusing on like actually scoring points, which is really bad, because in that game, I'm like dominating monsters and I'm using all my gold to get dungeon cards. So that way I can use Calculation, get all these fun little engine building effects going. And by that point, it's game over. So that's usually my trend for Dwellings. So I just have fun doing everything else but scoring. So with that said, as a wrap up, my least favorite game this month was definitely Lizard Wizard, because it was just very samey, very repetitive overall. And my favorite game of the month is yours truly, Dwellings, of course. I can't even anticipate any kind of game dethroning that still. Although there is another one coming up that may give it a run for its money. I thought Black Rose Wars might be up there for it, but I think because the rulebook is still like pretty bad overall, and the setup is still kind of daunting a little bit. There's a lot of stuff to set up for the game. Like, don't get me wrong, Black Rose Wars is really up there for me, like really, really up there, despite all those things. So imagine if all those flaws were fixed, right? But with Black Rose Wars, I like it a lot more at 3 players and up, but then Dwellings you can play at like any player count, and it's great. So that's why it still retains the number 1 spot. So with that said, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. If you made it here to the very, very end, I appreciate it. It's always fun doing these wrap-up videos where I get to just casually just chill with all of you and tell you about all the cool games I'm playing. So if you made it here to the very, very end, Carly, this one is for you if you're still here. Go ahead and comment Buzz down below for Board Game Buzz, who decided to make my friggin' day, week, year this year, and just made me so freaking happy with all of those videos that you put out. It's so much fun watching it, and I feel like we need to find another debacle to continue this streak on. But until then, thank you all so much, and I'll see you all in the next one.